let me introduce you to some hardening standards. Sometimes hardening standards are also called security policies, guidelines, baselines, and even benchmarks. So that can be a little bit confusing, and I probably will use the term interchangeably as well. But originally they were known as baselines because that is the baseline of that operating system for that particular document. So here you can see in front of you, first, this is the biggest and probably the most popular place to get hardening standards for operating systems and applications. So it's the Center for Internet Security, as you can see here. And they have what they call their benchmarks. Now, if I scroll down here, we can see an explanation of what the benchmarks are. So, benchmarks, recommended technical control rules / values for hardening operating systems, middleware, and software applications and network devices. Okay. Unique because the recommendations are defined via consensus among hundreds of security professionals worldwide. So the theory there being that you will have less issues if you use these because there's more of a consensus on this. And here, distributed free of charge by SIS in PDF format. So basically, they have a ton load of documents that will tell you how to harden all of the common operating systems, Windows, Mac, Linux, BSD, plus important applications like Apache, Chrome, Firefox, databases, virtual machines, and even Amazon AWS instances are available here. So what do these documents look like? Well, if we click here, we can go through and download them. But this is the sort of thing that you can expect to see. So here we have the Windows 10 Enterprise version. That's release 1511. So it's a recent release. And this is the sort of thing you're going to expect. So if you come down to the table of content, we're going to basically find for all of these a whole bunch of recommended things that you should do. So for example, here we've got enforce password history, meaning that users cannot use the same passwords when they change their passwords, maximum password age, and so on. And if you keep going down here, we'll see all sorts of different things that are suggested for locking down the system, modifying firmware, environment variables, and so on. So for me, these look very, very familiar. These are all pretty standard. So many of these are standard lockdown methods for Windows to tighten it up. And these guys have also got standards for Apple OS X we've got here, or Apple macOS, or whatever they're designed to call it this week. And again, you have the same sort of things, various settings for hardening the operating system, file system permissions, access control, etc. And of course, we've got Debian here as an example, and it's the same sort of thing. Configuration changes for IPv6. It's a file integrity monitor. And we've even got here changes you can make to iOS, the Apple iPhone and tablet operating system. So all pretty good there. Definitely good for a basis for hardening a system. Now, the risk is that the standards might not be in line for what it is you need them for, or they can even literally cripple the main purpose of the system. So be aware that these or any standard are not a one-fit-all solution. You can read around the recommendations and decide on whether or not it is something that you want to do. Now, if we pop back to here, we can see many benchmarks are also available to CIS security benchmark members only, and they are in XCCDF format, which is a machine readable XML format for use with a benchmarking tool or their benchmarking assessment tools, and is only available to members. So this is the thing about this site and the service that these provide. So you can get the PDFs, but you cannot get the associated scripts and the benchmarking tool unless you've got membership. Now, membership is not aimed at the home user, but is more of a business or academia offering. And you'd be looking at about $1,000 or so per year at the lowest level of membership in order to get access to those other machine readable XML formatted scripts and the benchmark assessment tools. So if we click on here, we can see it's asking us for a username and password. You can get trial access, but generally you're going to need to be a business in order for them to accept that. There are a number of benchmarking tools that they have available, but really there's one main tool, and that's the CIS CAT, which you can see the interface for here, which is a Java host-based configuration assessment tool. It includes both a command line interface and a graphical user interface, which you can see. You import the XCCDF files, the XML files, which are essentially machine readable versions of the PDFs, into this tool, and then you're able to assess how your system compares to that standard. So say you have a Debian and you want to compare it to the Debian standard that we just looked at, you would use that tool to do that. But as I said, membership is required in order to use this tool. The next place you can go to get security standards for hardening is the United States Government Configuration Baseline documents, which are provided by the NIST. These contain up to Windows 7 and Red Hat content only. So it is a little bit dated, but if you have Red Hat or Windows 7, they do have documents for that here. You can see the various versions here. You can see Red Hat, and if we scroll down, we can see it in various different formats. You can import it into a GPO. You can download it in the SCAP format. We're going to talk about that shortly, and import it into scanning tools. And you can download it in Excel format, which looks like this. And you can see all the various controls and the rationale for why you would do it, and what they recommend as the setting, and basically how to set it. So it's got all of the details there, like the registry hive that you change, etc. So good for Windows 7 and Red Hat only. Then there is the Defense Information Systems Agency, who have a department, the Information Assurance Support Environment, and they have the Security Technical Implementation Guides, the STIGs. And the baselines, the standards here are up to date for multiple operating systems. You can even get the latest phone operating systems like iOS security standards if you want to harden your phone or your tablet. These standards are for or aimed at the Department of Defense, the US DoD. So they may have requirements in them that don't quite fit your needs like any other standards. They do need to be looked at and not just adopt as a one-size-fits-all solution, but they are good general advice for hardening. Now we can see there's an iOS 10 one there. Now, in order to view these come in an XML format, and in order to view them, you need the STIG viewer. So if you download that STIG viewer, then you will be able to view them, and that is a Java file. So you'll need to have Java installed, and that'll work. And the STIG viewer looks something like this. And to view the ones that you download, you simply import and find the STIG that you want. So you can see here, XML format, open that, and there we can see here I've got a Windows 7 one, implementation guide, and we've got one here. This is a Mac OS X. If we look here, it provides us all of the different changes, and obviously if you look here, you can see it's providing us with general information. It's got severity, classifications, a discussion on what it is, where you need to go and what you need to check, how you can make the fix, where you go to fix and make it hardened or make it comply with this hardening standard. And it talks here about from which documents and from what references this is coming from. So this is coming from the NIST Special Publication 800 series, number 53, which are very familiar to me as these are well-known security documents. And here you can see all of the recommended settings. And there we can see UAC, something that we have already gone through. That gives you an example that many of the things that we've gone through on the course are part of what you would do to harden a system. So those are the big main places to get hardening standards, but I'm going to show you some other places and some other things you can do on the next few lectures.